You may have heard the untrue statement that sewing with knits is not for beginners. I'm going to be giving you some tips, techniques, introduce you to a few tools that you'll use in your sewing practice in other ways for you to get great results. I am working through a big bin of cozy fabrics, so this was a perfect time to talk about knits. Sewing with knits is much easier to get a good fit than with woven fabrics, which is why I think it is beginner friendly. I'm going to be dropping some knowledge that I wish I had when I first started sewing with knits on some tips, techniques, and tools, and I will demonstrate all of those while I sew the Jarrah Sweater by Nielsen. First, I thought let's drop some knit knowledge and talk a little bit about knits. I'm going to talk about knits that I think that you might start out with as a beginner. Either a t-shirt or a sweatshirt. Those are great places to start, or a t-shirt dress. And so the first thing I want to talk about is cotton jersey. I have a couple samples entangled on my cutting table here. The first one I'm going to show you is an art gallery cotton jersey. This is a little spendy. Normally it goes about $20 a yard when you pay full price, which I did not. I got this on super duper sale for around $11 or $12 a yard. I struggled with what to make with this, which is why my bin of fabric became so large. And then I decided this weekend to make some pajamas out of it. So those I completed this weekend. And it is a beautiful fabric to work with. It is soft, it has nice drape, and it has four-way stretch. Now, in knit parlance, four-way stretch means it'll stretch in both directions across the width and both directions across the length. So it stretches right and left, and it stretches up and down. That's called four-way stretch. You can get cotton jerseys with different amounts of stretch and weight. Here's another one. Very juvenile, I know. I made myself some cute PJs out of this. I did the Juno Pajamas by Tilly and the Buttons. And this has pretty good stretch. The recovery, it doesn't bounce back as quickly as the art gallery fabric, but it's still a nice fabric. I can't remember the make on that. So those are cotton jerseys. Not a big fan of polyester jersey. It doesn't breathe as well, but I do have something to show you. It's a jersey that has a little bit of polyester in the mix. This is a rayon jersey. I bought this from Hearts Fabrics back when I thought I was a winter in my coloring, which is why I've not sewn this up for myself. It's not the best color for me, but it is a great fabric. The rayon means it's going to be much drapier. So this would be nice as a dress. It's light enough weight. You can make leggings out of it. It has great recovery. Look how quickly that bounces back. So this is a rayon jersey. This particular composition is 80% rayon, 15% polyester, and 5% elastane, which is the same thing as spandex or lycra. So this is great for that. I think the polyester will make it a little more hard wearing. The thing about rayon jersey is it needs to be treated delicately. You need to wash it kind of by itself, and I think that might have held me off a little bit with working with this, but I should sew this up and see how tough it is in comparison to a straight rayon jersey. The next thing I want to talk about are French terries or sweatshirting. When I first started out, I was like, what is French terry? And a lot of your sweatshirts are made from French terry. This Helen's Closet Jackson Pullover is made with an exclusive French terry for Minerva. I do shop a lot at Minerva. I'm a brand ambassador, but everything I'm showing you, I spent my own money on. So the French terry means it's got a loop at the back. And there are some French terries I have on my table that are fleecy in the back. In the US, we would say, oh, that's sweatshirting fabric because it has been brushed to make it very soft. This is just a straight up French terry, and it is cotton. There's no elastane or spandex in this, so it has very little stretch. It doesn't bounce back. It would kind of lose its shape. I made the Pogonip pullover, which is a little bit of an oversized pullover. It's a Friday Pattern Company pattern, and this was perfect. This cotton French terry reminds me of the old Champion sweatshirts, nice and rugged. I do like this, but I would not use this in a pattern where there was negative ease, meaning it fit closer to the body, and where it needed to stretch a lot. I want to show you this French terry. This is a Robert Kaufman. I bought this at my local store in Charleston, 5/8 seams. And this is brushed back. You can see how fluffy it is. And this has good stretch. This is also 95% cotton, 5% spandex or lycra. It is a little beefier than the sweatshirting fabric or the French terry I'm wearing here. This is the French terry I probably use the most. This is part of Minerva's core range. This is a medium loop back French terry. It has full waist stretch, great recovery. It is not too heavy, perfect for the South here in the US. And I use this for joggers, for sweatshirts. It's a similar weight to this Jackson pullover I'm wearing. It's really nice. I wanted to show you this. This is from Blackbird Fabric. This is a viscose. It's a bamboo French terry. It is fleece back, lovely warm. I'd say this is medium weight. Great recovery, lots of stretch. And as I hold it up, you can see that it drapes a little more. So nice. I have not sewn this because when I purchased this, I thought I was a winter and I thought these cool blues would look good on me. I now know, I have my colors done, that I look much better in the warmer colors. This is so nice. It was a little expensive. I think I'm going to turn this into a sweatshirt for one of my daughters-in-law. Allie in particular looks so pretty in blue. This fabric was 66% rayon from bamboo, 28% cotton, 6% spandex. That's probably why it has so much bounce to it. It's really luscious. It was a little spendy, which is why I haven't sewn anything for the boys, but that will be something for my daughter-in-law. I did want to talk about a fabric that is a little more slippery, and that's swimsuit fabric. You might want to use this for a rash guard or for a suit. I made my husband a drag suit out of this for swim team practice. It has great stretch and recovery. The thing that makes it a little more difficult to work with, it is very slippery. So I would cut this out flat. I wouldn't try to fold it and cut it out, but otherwise, I think you're good to go. It has drape, and if you go slow, you can be successful with this as well. This is the fabric we're going to be using today. It is a very luscious French terry from Atelier Brunette. It is heavier in weight than what I was expecting when I ordered it. I was going to sew the South Bank sweater dress by Nina Lee out of this, but in Charleston, South Carolina, I didn't think I would get enough wear out of this expensive fabric if I wore it as a dress. It would just be too warm inside. This is going to turn into the Megan Nielsen Jarrah Sweater, the very straightforward, simple version. We'll be sewing that together. Before we do, I want to come down to the cutting table so I can show you how you can find out the percentage stretch of your fabric, which will be very important to know whether it will work with the pattern you're using. This is how you can find out what amount of stretch you have. This is the cross grain. This is my selvage edge here. I am going to grip my fabric, and I'm not going to the very end where the selvage is. I have it lined up on my cutting mat. You could do it on a cutting mat or have a ruler, and this is all you do. I'm picking out a piece that is 4 inches long, 0 and 4, and I'm going to pull this end, and I can stretch it to the 6 marking. So that is 2 inches greater than what I had it. So that means this has 50% stretch. It stretches to 50% of its size here to the 6 without too much effort. This is the rayon jersey. I'm grabbing it at 0 and at 4, and I'm going to stretch it, and I can stretch it all the way to 9. So this has greater than 100% stretch because it goes more than twice as long from the 4. I can almost make it to the 10 on this. This is super stretchy. So I'm showing you several things that are game changers for sewing with knits. I got this cutting mat and a rotary cutter, and using pattern weights for the first time when I started sewing with knits. And now I cut out all of my fabric, woven or knits, using this equipment. You don't have to have a cutting mat and a rotary cutter, but it does make for a nicer cut. The other thing I do is, you'll notice I have clipped my folded edge to my folded pattern piece. So this is where it says cut on the fold, and that keeps it nice and secure, and it's inexpensive. These are hair clips, or you can use Wonder Clips. So let me show you how this rotary cutter makes things so much easier. I like using this one because when you put it down, the blade automatically goes into the safety mode, and it has a lock, and I've made it a habit to, when I put it down, I lock it. So I'm just putting it up against my pattern, cutting away. Now, if you don't have a rotary cutter, you can use scissors. These are dressmaking shears. You'll notice the shape where this tends to look more flat. That's so you can put them against the table. And when you're cutting with scissors, get this situated. You want the scissors to be against the table, and you don't want to be picking up your fabric and cutting. That's going to lead to a messier cut. I'll just pick it up slightly. I've got my shears against the table, and I'm taking nice long clips and cutting through it. Now, I prefer the rotary cutter. It's quicker, it's more accurate, and it gets the job done faster. So I'm going to continue cutting out my pattern, and then I will meet you for the next step. Even if you're not using your cutting mat and rotary cutter, I highly recommend pattern weights. You'll get a nice clean cut, and you're not going to distort your fabric as much as if you're pinning the fabric. And it's so nice when the lazy girl method, the quicker, easier way, is also the better, more precise way. At least that's what I think. You may have seen me use these pattern weights. They're fancy. I kind of like them, but I just recently got these at Charlotte Frocktails in my goodie bag. Normally, I use whatever's at hand. Very often, it's my tape dispenser, my tin of pins, and I do have some unofficial, official pattern weights. These are some heavy-duty galvanized washers that I purchased at the hardware store, and I'll scatter them strategically on my pattern, and it didn't cost a lot of money. You could even use a can of soup, so use whatever you have, it will work. And just like when you're sewing with wovens, it's important that you are putting your pattern on green. It's very easy to find. I can see the little ribs that run vertically through the fabric. It might not be shown as much on camera. If you're having trouble seeing it, you can stretch the fabric and you can see the ribs, how they run. but to my eye, I can see them. I can see it actually a little more clearly on the printed peach or whatever that is. I'll put in a close-up, but you do want to line your fabric on green, just the same as with the woven fabric. I have all of my pattern pieces cut out. The first thing that I did after cutting out my pattern pieces was to stabilize the back shoulder seam. This is some tape. I found out about this from Whitney from Tomcat Stitchery. It's SewkeysE. It is a little interfacing. It's a 1/2 inch wide, which is perfect for my needs. I like to use this because it's pre-cut, ready to use, but you could certainly cut a strip of knit interfacing, similar weight to what you're working on, and iron that on. If you don't have an iron-on stabilizer, you can use some clear elastic and put that on your back piece while you stitch it together. Just don't stretch the elastic. What this does is stabilizes the shoulder seam so that it wears well, it doesn't get wonky over time, stretch out, or the stitches become loose along the shoulder seam. So that's something you definitely want to do. You can use ribbon, you can use elastic, or you can use iron-on interfacing. The first step is going to be sewing the shoulder seams. I'm going to take you to the sewing machine and show you the most essential piece of equipment if you're going to be sewing knits on a sewing machine. This, I think, is an absolute must-have, even when you're working with super stable knits like this. This is a walking foot. It's sometimes referred to as a dual feed foot or an even feed foot. That's because it has feet underneath here that will grip the fabric. So you'll have the feed dogs pulling it through the machine from the bottom, and then the feed dogs here on top of this walking foot will be pulling it through as well. So both layers will be going through at the same rate. If you don't have the walking foot on, what can happen is your bottom layer can be pulled through faster than your top layer, and that will lead to very wonky looking stitches. It won't look very nice. The first time I sewed with knits, I got the most wonky looking sweatshirt because I did not have a walking foot. I did a little research, realized I needed it, and the next one came out perfect. I had a load of sewing experience. I just had never sewed with knits. Now, just the same as if you're sewing any garment, you want to test your stitches first before you go into your garment. Today I'm using Maraflex thread. This is a stretchy thread, and it allows me to sew with a straight stitch and not pop. If I were to do that with regular sewing thread, it would pop. It would not be able to stretch and give along with the fabric. But I do need to test my stitch length. With Maraflex, you need to go with a little bit longer stitch length than you would typically use. Normally, I would sew a woven in this weight with a 2.5 stitch length. I have upped it to 3.0, and I'm going to give it a test. I have Maraflex in the top and in the bobbin. I have a little bit different color thread in the bobbin so that you'll be able to see the stitches better. So let's give it a test. So you can barely see the stitches on this side, but you can see with the different colored thread, the stitches look very nice and even, and I can pull on it, I can stretch it, and it is not popping. So the 3, I think, is what I want to go with. If you don't have Maraflex thread, then you can use a zigzag or lightning stitch. I will show you a photo of what those are. Lightning, a regular zigzag. This is the stretch stitch, and this is a straight stitch. All of these are sewn with Maraflex thread. None of these will pop, mainly because of the Maraflex thread, but these are all good stretch stitches if you're using regular polyester thread. Don't use cotton thread. All cotton thread is not as strong for garment sewing. This is what my stitch menu looks like on my machine. This is the stretch stitch, the one that goes back and forth. Here is my traditional zigzag, and I can adjust the length and the width. And then the lightening stitch is this one, the tiny zigzag. It is a straight stitch. I would say this stitch, the lightening, and the zigzag are your more common ones. And this stretch stitch is not uncommon. This one I would say is a really strong one. And my next choice would probably be the lightening stitch, followed by the zigzag. Whenever I'm doing a sewing video for beginners, I like to take the opportunity to talk about the needle threader. If you have an automatic needle threader, it is important to note the size of needle that you have in here. And let's talk about needles anyway. If you're sewing with knits, you should be using a jersey, a ballpoint, or a stretch needle. I'm going to leave a link in the description box about the different types of needles and what they're appropriate for. It is important, and you should be making your choices according to your fabric. The size of the needle is so important if you're using an automatic needle threader. You should never use your automatic needle threader with a needle smaller than a 75. You might say, well, Christine, I got it to work on a 60 and it worked fine. And it might work fine for 1 or 2 times, but then you're going to break it. Your needle threader has a small wire that's going to come through the hole of the needle and pull your thread through. If your needle is smaller than a 75, it's eventually going to break on you, and you don't want to do that. I've got a size 75, and look, it just threaded nicely, so we're going to start. I've used my seam guide to mark my seam allowance. This is some blue painter's tape. It's got a very low tackiness, so it's not going to leave a glue residue on my sewing machine bed. And I'm ready to go. I've changed to navy thread in my top and my bottom of the Maraflex thread. So I'm going to raise my needle. I'm going to put my fabric underneath, line it up with my seam allowance, lower my presser foot. Now my sewing machine has a feature where it will lock the stitch automatically. If you don't have this feature where the needle will go several times in the same spot, locking your stitch, simply stitch a couple stitches forward, stitch a couple backwards, and then come forward again, and that will lock your thread. So I'm going to start sewing. I'm using Wonder Clips. They're convenient, they're quick to use, but also I don't have the danger of a needle or a pin going through my sewing machine, and I didn't see it because it got lost in the thickness. There's no missing these Wonder Clips, and so that's going to reduce the chance of running into a pin and breaking a needle, or worse, breaking your sewing machine and having to send it in for maintenance. So I'm going to continue sewing along. You'll notice that the needle is coming down into this area where I have the interfacing that is going to stabilize it. We have our 1/4 inch seam allowance, nice and stretchy. I'm going to sew the other shoulder seam and then we'll move on. Because I do have a serger, I'm going to finish my seams on the serger. I can sew all of this on my serger, but many new sewists don't have a serger, so I wanted to show you how you could sew this on a sewing machine. The serger trims and it sews at the same time. It has 2 needles that are stitching the stitches, and then loopers that go around the end to finish it off very nicely. And that is what the stitch looks like. See how quick that is on the serger? We have attached the front to the back at the shoulders. The next step is to add the neckband. Do not try it on before you attach the neckband because you could get this out of shape and it won't look nice. This is the perfect time to talk about ribbing. There's several options out there, and this is something I wish I knew more of before I started sewing knits. I have quite a bit of ribbing in my stash. I've got some of my favorites, some I'm not too sure what I'm going to do with, and I thought it would be a good opportunity to talk about it. So the ribbon comes in different sizes and also in different compositions. You can buy polyester, you can buy a cotton spandex mix, you can buy a bamboo ribbing, and you can buy 100% cotton. And I have some of everything except for polyester here in my stash. If you've been following me a while, you know, not a big fan of polyester. So the first I want to show you is bamboo. And this is a tubular rib knit. And when you get it by the yardage, you get this tube, and you can see I bought a good deal of this. I think I had Christmas pajamas in mind when I bought this, and this is a bamboo rib knit tubular. The thing about bamboo is it is very soft, it's very comfortable against the skin, it has really good stretch. But one of the things I found was that it can be a little bit floppy, and you might need to adjust because it is so stretchy. You might need to adjust the length that you cut. You might need to cut it a little smaller than some of the other ribbings so that it brings the neck in and meets things as designed. So this is bamboo. I have it in red and in this blue colorway, and I bought this from fabric.com years ago before Amazon took them over, and then they went out of business. So the next one I want to talk about is cotton. I'm a little bit of a snob, so I thought, great, I have some 100% cotton. That's what I want to use. And the same thing, the recovery was different from what I expected, and let me show you an example. This is a Jackson pullover. I wore one in the first segment of the video, and in this one I had some gray ribbing, and I thought, oh, that'll be nice. That'll bring out the gray and these little Frenchy bulldogs. It'll look cute, but I should have made it a little shorter. It's stretched out, doesn't have as much recovery. It doesn't stand up nicely. I actually pressed this the other day, folded it, put it in this sewing room and ready for this video. And notice how it wants to turn up here. I haven't sewn it down. I had thought when I made it, I noticed right away, and I thought, well, maybe I'll take it out and I'll put another neckband in. A couple years later, obviously, I didn't do that. I still like the color combo. I don't wear this a whole lot, and it's probably down to the neckband, so maybe I should replace that. So that's one of the dangers with it. I ended up getting this out of my stash. I used it on the waistband. I also used it on the cuff, and I gave it to my friend Marty. with all the caveats of this is how I was using it, I don't think that's the intended use for it. I do have some more cotton, and this is something that you might see. It's much wider than the other tubular knit I have shown you, and it was the same for the gray. See how much wider that is? So I could cut out a garment, a front, and then cut out a back. It's wide enough for that. And I think I bought this with the intention of making a Nico top, and I still might do that. I've got lots of yardage of this, and I really should decide if I'm going to sew something for me or for someone in the family. I should put this in that cozy bin of knits because I'm not going to use this for cuffs and neckbands and such. I need to put it in with my French terry and use it that way. I did notice that I have a line running through it where it's faded some, where it was folded. And that could be in a previous sewing room. I had a window that got a lot of light. So, lesson learned. Now I'm going to show you my favorite ribbing that I've found. It works for me, and it comes in so many different colors. Because I do sew some colorful French terries, I like to pick out different accent colors to use, especially for the little ones in my life. And it's a fun way of adding the accent. I use it for pocket details on the Hudson pants, for the cuffs, both for sweatshirts and for doing cuffs on the joggers. I like this. This is their tubular stretch knit. It is 95% cotton, 5% elastane or spandex. It's got great stretch and great recovery. I really like this, and it works well for me. So that's a little quick info on that. I want to show you the width of it. I guess that would be important. This is what you would expect in a tubular knit. All right, so let's get to work on this Jarrah sweater. My niece came over yesterday. She wanted a little sewing lesson, so I took a break in videoing. And while I did, I thought, well, let me ask the community for neckband choices. I had already cut out some in this color that matches the sweatshirt, but I had this stretch knit. I've got a bigger chunk of this. It's very nice and stretchy. I have a Jarrah sweater that I use this for, and I think the color coordinates really well. And I said, well, should I use that for the neckband? Overwhelmingly, y'all told me I should go with my first choice, so this is what we're going to be using today. I'm going to place it. I've cut it out. I've made my markings. I'm going to place the short ends together. I'm going to sew my neckband along the short ends. I'm going to fold it over, give it a little press, and I'll meet you over at the sewing machine, and we're going to install this in the sweater. I do like to baste my neckbands in before I serge them. So even though I have a serger and I do most of my knit sewing straight on the serger, the neckbands, I do like to baste them in. That way, if I find something I'm not quite so happy with, I can just unpick that section, baste it in, and then when I go to the serger, I know I'm good to go. I just realized I recorded several clips without any sound. I'm not sure what happened, so I'll cover that information in a little bit. We are at the point where we're attaching the sleeves. I've already attached my neckband. To attach the neckband, I sewed the short sides together at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I pressed it. I lined up my notches. You do have to stretch the neckband a little bit, not the sweatshirt, to get it to fit, and that allows the neckband to sit nicely. I've attached a label. I used my Sewline glue stick. Let me show you. This is a washable glue stick. I used this to attach the label And I've attached a handmade label to the back of the neckband. You just put a little glue on. I sandwiched the label into this seamed edge and I hit it with a dry iron, and it's better than pins. It allows me to get a nice neat label, easy peasy. So I'm going to bring you down here so you can see how I have clipped my sleeve. I love to sew the sleeves on the flat. I'd not done this technique till I started sewing sweatshirts. I had long experience set-in sleeves because I started my journey sewing heirloom clothes for children, actually. And so I'd done that for years. And boy, when I saw how easy and quick sewing a flat sleeve in, I was a changed woman. Let me bring it down here so you can see. I've already clipped my sleeve in, but let me show you what it looks like. Here's my neck opening, and I have lined my sleeve up with the center notch, right sides together. And let me show you on the other sleeve. It's so much easier to see while I'm doing it. I need to pin the other sleeve. Normally I will pin one sleeve, sew it, and then pin the other. But part of that was some of the video that didn't have any audio to it. So this is my piece. Here's my shoulder seam. This is a dropped shoulder, meaning the seam of the sleeve is going to come down onto my bicep, but you can see where the curve is. And I am going to do the sleeve head. That is this larger section here. You see this is wider. I'm going to line it up right sides together. I'm going to find my notch here. I'm going to put it on the shoulder seam. And you will notice that as far as orientation goes, this is the end of the sleeve where the cuff will be. That's facing in towards the neckband. And then I'm going to take this end of the sleeve and I'm going to find the end of the sleeve cap here. I'm going to line them up and I'm going to put a clip in it. And I'll just pick the fabric up, and it is drafted beautifully. There's no stretching, there's no gathering, there's no easing. It just matches perfectly. And I clip it together and I'll go all the way around, just matching them up. And then you can go to your sewing machine or to your serger and 1/4 inch seam allowance. Just go from one end to the next, sewing it on. And you will see how it starts to take shape, because that's going to be sewn on. Your sleeve will come together when it's finished. Of course, we'll be sewing it right sides together. But you can kind of see how the sweatshirt is taking shape here. So I'm going to finish clipping. I'm going to serge this on, and then I will meet you back here and you will see how quickly this is coming together. That was really fast. I have my sleeves sewn on to the front and back, and all I do now is I'm going to turn it inside out, and we are going to sew from the sleeve all the way down the side to the hem on both sides. We will clip it, and I will go to the serger, and lickety split is going to really take shape. So I'm going to start at a sleeve. This is where I'm going to attach the cuffs. I'm going to put it right sides together, and I'm going to start clipping down. Where are my clips? Here they are. I'm going to match up the end of my sleeve. I'm going to go and make sure that I match up at the seam here. where they're sewn in. I want that to line up nicely. Put a clip in it. And then I'm going to sew all along the length of the sleeve and down the side of my sweatshirt. And then I'll serge it together. So let's get to clipping. I don't need to put too many clips in because this fabric does want to stick together. It's really lovely to sew with. I love these stable sweatshirting. So I'm going to sew from the end of the sleeve down the side, and I'll pin the other side, and I'll do that on my serger. You could certainly do it on the sewing machine. I am loving how this is coming out. It is all attached, and now I'm going to do the hemband. And the hemband goes on similar to the neckband. We're going to sew it on right sides together. And I really don't think this fabric is directional because it has these apples or plums going in different directions. If it were directional, I would do a little test to make sure that when I sewed it on and folded it down, it was going in the direction I wanted. So I'm going to pin this around the circumference of the hem. Again, you do this right sides together. You may decide one side of your hemband looks better than the other. In my case, I'm happy with both sides. And I'm going to start at the side seams. I'm going to line up the seam of my hemband with the seam of my sweatshirt, and I'm going to clip it in place. And I'm going to go to the other side. This is kind of a wide fitting sweatshirt. It's a little bit cropped. I think I did add a tiny bit of length to it when I traced out the pattern, but just a little bit. I'm only 5'4". I don't remember what size or height this was drafted for, and this is a size 18 that I am sewing. It's a little bit of an oversized sweatshirt. So I've got the two sides clipped, lining the raw edges up, and so I'm going to go around and I'm going to clip my hemband all the way around, and then I'm going to meet you over at the serger. I've put this on. I do love the Jarrah sweater. I think this may be my 4th or 5th that I have sewn. I'm on the fence. Let me know what you think. Should I trim the sleeves down and add cuffs, or should I just turn them under and hem them? If you made the Jarrah, what do you think? I would be using the same fabric for the cuffs on the sleeves. And then here's my hemband. Let me back up so you can see. I did not have to stretch this to get it to fit in. And that's one of the nice things about starting out with a sweatshirting or a French terry that isn't super stretchy. It's nice and stable, and you don't accidentally stretch it. You want to be careful as you're sewing it that you're not pulling as you sew, and it's not, that way you won't get the distorted seams. I really do like this. This is very nice fabric. Now, I don't know that I would wear it over the South Bank sweater dress. It's a little bit full here. Lots of sweater going on. It will sit on my body better when I don't have a chunky sweater dress on underneath. And it's a little bit warm today to be wearing it. So I am, if you've been following me, working down on a stash of cozy fabrics. And this is my make number 5, I think. I'm very proud that everything I've made so far has been for me. Tomorrow's going to be all about sewing joggers. If you have any questions about sewing with knits, or if you have extra tips that you would like to add in the comment section, please drop the comments down below. If you're new to sewing with knits, I have a sew along for the Brindle and Twig hoodie. I'll link it right here. If you have any questions, hit me up. I'm always glad to talk sewing, and I will see you soon.